Brent, you mentioned Jalen Hurts, and it's almost like, we're digging into everything else because we're just kind of used to it at this point. But he's had an amazing start here, man. For you, biggest area of improvement from him? All right, welcome back in, everybody. Happy Wednesday to you. Thanks for hanging out with us. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. We have a giggling Derek Gunn, Barrett Brooks, Rob Ellis. What are you doing? What are you up to over there?
I'm just happy today. Can't I just be happy if I want to be happy?
Is
there a catch to it?
Yeah, you're up to something.
Why can't I just be happy? Why is there always a catch to it? Why?
Well, I'm sure we'll find out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we'll find out.
I'm just in a good mood. Can't I be in a good mood?
I know one reason why you're in a good mood.
Why, Rob? Why?
Because we have Brandon Lee Gowton joining us.
That's
he
true.
Is the manager and editor-in-chief of Bleeding Green, of course, the co-founder BGN Radio as well. Brandon, see what you do, man. When you come on the show, all of a sudden Gunner's Mr. Chippy, happy, laughing, enjoying himself guy. He doesn't do that with us.
I knew that was the real reation why he was excited and happy. So I'm glad I can brighten everyone's day.
I'm in a different place, Brandon. They just won't let me be happy. They keep trying to bring me down to their swamp level.
He misses seeing you on a daily basis, Brandon.
Of course.
Yes. So I'll start with this a very sort of generic question. Are you surprised the Eagles are this good?
I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, from a standpoint of, I think we all realize they'd be, an above average team, optimistic outlook. But I think anyone's kind of lying if they thought Jalen Hurts was definitely going to be like the MVP or like a strong MVP candidate through 3 games, and that the defense would tighten up, especially after how it was kind of not the best in week 1. So, am I surprised they're good? No. Am I surprised they're this good? Yeah, I am.
Well, looking at Jacksonville and their way in, and they kind of turned the corner also with Coach being there now. How do you think he'll be welcomed into this area, into the ring?
I mean, it better be like a standing ovation. It better be. I mean, I don't. What's the reason to boo Doug Peterson? Because you're
right.
You're mad about how 2020 went. I mean, can't we all realize by now, like, he was not the main culprit there? And even if he was, like, he didn't want to leave. It wasn't like, this isn't a Carson Wentz situation. He didn't ask out. He wanted to stay. He wanted it his way. And the Eagles didn't want to do that. And they even said at the time when they fired Doug that it wasn't a reflection on him as much as they just wanted to go in a different direction. So I'd be really disappointed if anyone booed him.
Okay. I'll ask you, Brandon. I just hit Derek and Barrett with this, but in hindsight, like, I thought he got shown the door a little too early, personally. In hindsight, do you think it was the right move by the Eagles?
I mean, I think it's clearly working out for them, or at least so far. I think that my whole thing about that season and at the end of things there was Doug was taking a disproportionate amount of blame. Not to say he was blameless. Obviously, Doug played a role in that team being really bad. And I'm not saying he was without any fault, but I think he got so much heat. And at the time, there's still people being like, we can fix Carson Wentz. Just needs a new coach. Doug broke him. I think that looks very silly now, especially what's transpired with Carson Wentz and with what's going on in Jacksonville so far with Doug being really good.
Hey, Brandon, this team has been so good in 2 phases of the game lately, offense, defense, but special teams is a mess. What do you do with the special team scenario? The return game, the coverage games, nothing's really working for them.
Yeah, it's almost like, what can you do? For as good as an offseason, great as an offseason, even as Howie Roseman had, didn't really add much at returner that you feel good about. The punter might be an issue. They had 2 touchbacks last week that were like, one was like from Washington's 49, the other was like the 43 or so. I don't know how much you can really, fix those things when the personnel's probably going to be the same. I would like to see Devontae Smith you probably can't use him full time, but I definitely would like to see him a little bit more than never back on those punt returns, because I do think he can be effective there. But that's not ideal for a guy you're relying on so heavily in offense.
Brad, you mentioned Jalen Hurts, and it's almost like, we're digging into everything else because we're just kind of used to it at this point. But he's had an amazing start here, man. For you, biggest area of improvement from him?
I mean, it's the most important area, which I think is just, as a passer on the whole, in terms of accuracy, in terms of reading the field, seeing the field, knowing where to go with the ball constantly. He's always been pretty good at avoiding turnovers, but I mean, he only has one turnover this season, and that was on a tipped pass on a play where I thought Kenny Gainwell could have caught that pass. So, he's just been great really in every phase. I think we've seen different things from him each week. Week 1, it was all about avoiding pressure and taking off running and being a weapon with his legs. There's kind of question, all right, how much is that sustainable? He goes out against the Vikings, and he was making and attempting passes at a high level that I'd never really even seen from him before. And then against Washington, it's all about the big play. He's airing it out. What I liked from him in that game most recently was that, unlike Carson Wentz, who I think struggled with this at times, he gave his receivers chances to make plays on the ball. And to their credit, they helped him out, and they did, both Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. So he's kind of checking every box here.
How much credit do you give the OC Shane Steichen, or the head coach, as far as his development? Who do you give the most props to, and him being what he is right now?
I would give the most props to Jalen Hurts himself. He's obviously, we all know he grinds. But yeah, I think, and Brian Johnson too. I think, you talk about guys who are going to be, in position to get hired elsewhere. Certainly, I think Brian Johnson, the Eagles quarterbacks coach, who was really impressive when we heard from him in training camp, by the way. I think he definitely deserves a lot of credit. He worked with Dak Prescott back at in Mississippi State in college. So, he kind of has a track record here. He's building a track record of, working with quarterbacks and having success. So I think it all goes into it. Shane Steichen's play calling, I think, has been pretty good for the most part. Sirianni's ability to defer, and obviously he still has a process in the play calling scheme. They coordinate going into a game. So credit all around, but I would start with Jalen Hurts.
I would go so far as to say, if Steichen continues on this course, I think he may get a head coaching job before Jonathan Gannon does, if this continues.
It's crazy, but conceivably the Eagles could lose both their offensive and defensive coordinator in one offseason again, and maybe the quarterbacks coach too. There's going to be a lot of people coming for the Eagles coaching staff if they continue like this.
Brandon, I'll tell you, offensively, they just present so many problems. When you have those two guys on the outside, when you have Dallas Goedert, when you have the potential of a running game, which wasn't great last week, but you have the potential of that running game. I don't really know what area you look to take away. I guess you probably go the Detroit route and just blitz the hell out of them. What do you think Jacksonville's approach is going to be this week?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think there's an ideal answer to your point. I do think it's a good point by you, Rob, about the run game being surprisingly disappointing against Washington, where Washington was allowing 7.5 yards per carry heading into last week, and you thought that was going to be an area where they could have success on the ground, and they didn't. I'm not really concerned about the run game long term because the offensive line is good, and we've seen the running backs produce in the past, but it's something to keep an eye on. I don't know how you stop Jalen Hurts right now. Teams have thrown everything at him. They blitzed him. They played Lions blitzed him. Vikings played off. I don't really know what you're supposed to do right now. You can't just take one player away. It's not okay, you can take A.J. Brown away because Devontae Smith's going to step up, or Dallas Goedert. Even the role players on this team, Quez Watkins, didn't show up on the stats sheet against Washington, but he drew 2 pass interference penalties, which were big. Zach Pascal, he got stopped on that 1 4th down carry, but he's valuable as a blocker and a guy who can contribute on a 3rd down, and sometimes in certain situations had a good legal pick. Basically, didn't actually even contact the receiver on that one Devontae Smith catch and run across the field. So everyone's really contributing at a high level. I don't know. I don't think there is a real answer to stop this team.
Is it? Are you concerned with the lack of production? Well, it's not the lack of production, but not scoring in the second half.
I think it's something to put on the radar, but I think when you imagine being a Raiders fan right now, and your biggest problem is you're not totally blowing out teams because you can't score in the second half. You would sign up for that. These are champagne problems, I feel like. So,
right.
I like that, champagne problems.
Yeah, not the biggest. I get it, but I think the Eagles have never been in a spot too in these second halves where they've really had to go out and score. They've never been in desperation mode. So, I think they've taken their foot off the gas. And, you'd like to see it get better, sure, but I'm not really worried about it.
Give me your assessment of the way Avonte Maddox has held down that slot corner position. I think as good as that entire secondary has played, I think he's the most aggressive DB that they have, and maybe the most fearless that they have.
He's 5'9", whatever.
5'9", yeah.
And he's stopping Washington's tight end who's like 6'6", Logan Thomas, whatever, 250 at the goal line on a shovel pass, which are like, I mean, that's just an incredible play. I mean, how many times do you see the shovel pass there, especially for Andy Reid, obviously in the past, but like that play is so hard to defend. Like it's just, even if you have really good defenders, that was really impressive. Maddox has been big. I also know he had a pass deflection in this game. He's been huge and underrated too, because we talk about Slay all the time. Bradbury has been a great addition, but Maddox has really been solid there in the slot. And, the Eagles just obviously decided to extend him last year, and that's looking like a smart call.
Brand, Reddick gets a sack and a half and was, in on a couple others, looked very active on Sunday. In your estimation, was it just a matter of time? Did they do something different here to kind of get him going? And do you feel like that's a springboard as we go forward here for him to be certainly more of a factor than he was the first 2 games?
I definitely think, when the whole defensive line is feasting, there's obviously some element of the opponents helping you in terms of, Washington was in a tough spot where Sam Cosmi, their starting right tackle, got hurt during the game. Chase Roulier went on IR, leading up to the week. So that offensive line was clearly banged up and then just getting dominated all game long. So I'm not trying to downplay Reddick's performance, but, let's see if he can kind of stack these games at all. One thing that I do believe with him, coming into this year, I believe he had like 8 forced fumbles in his career, and he's really good at that. So I think that's something that is real. He's going to be able to maybe not always, even if he's not getting to the quarterback and bringing him down like for an actual sack, he's going to be disruptive, and he's going to be able to kind of come around like he did with Wentz there and knock that ball out and create a big play for the defense.
I just want to bring it back to special teams. I just can't get up. I've been asking, where is Michael Clay? What's going on? It was such a decided advantage for the Eagles for so many years when we had, Coach Phipp. He would, flip the yardage. He would pin defenses. He would, put the offense in a better position. We returned. I don't see any of that production. Yes, we have a bomb field goal kicker. Yes, Jake Elliott is great. But after that, I mean, it's abysmal. I mean, there's nothing. They're doing nothing. I feel as though we only have 2/3 of our team. How can we get that 1/3 in the mix again?
I think this falls into champagne problems again I'm not to downplay it. I'm just saying when you're talking about like when your biggest concern is special teams, you're doing decent. But yeah, I don't know, because again, it comes back to the
can't trade for anybody.
Yeah, like what are you going to do? Like there's only so much you can do. I mean, Howie, I would say, and one area where the Eagles have been good in season before is their pro personnel department, and like kind of finding a guy who shakes free sometimes, who gets cut from somewhere, signing someone off else's practice squad. I guess that would be my answer. I would try to experiment, with some of those spots. And, look, they just called up Britton Covey for the last time in terms of like the amount of
next time they bring him up, he's got to be on the roster.
Exactly. So like I don't know if I would like just stick with him, maybe as much as I would tinker a little bit with those bottom of the roster spots, some of those practice squad spots, maybe try to find the right combination, try to find a diamond in the rough. I feel like that's where you kind of need your personnel department to step up during the season.
Sproles, come back.
Yeah, right. Break glass in case of emergency. My annual TJ Edwards question that I like to throw at everybody, because the guy has been everywhere so far, Brandon. Is he the one who sort of ascended more than anybody else on that side of the ball? I mean, he was not that he was bad last year. I'm not saying that, but has really taken his game to another level.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, he was great in training camp, and for all the Nakobe Dean hype, and I don't think anything that's happened so far in Nakobe Dean's career is any like indictment on him, as much as it's just been a credit to TJ Edwards for not being a player you want to take off the field. And then same thing with Kaiser White, who he had some penalties last week, but I think overall has played well as well. So both of those guys playing well is a big deal. TJ Edwards might be a player the Eagles want to sign to an extension at some point this season if they feel like they can get him at a good number and lock him in as a long-term piece here. Because, I mean, he's been great. He's like a tackling machine out there. He's not the most athletic player. That's the big knock on him, but he is smart and he can kind of know where to be in coverage. So I think he's for a team that's struggled at that position for a long time, he's a really nice player to have.
Hey, Brandon,
they got a third rounder, so I don't know if they do that. I mean, he's still got one more year left on his deal, right?
I think I forget. He might be like a restricted free agent after this year or something, but okay. They're getting to a point where they're going to have to make a decision on him soon.
And they usually like to get things done,
Right.
sooner rather than later. I mean, Howie's that, and because he gets these guys at a cheaper rate if he gets it done sooner. So I'm with you, Brandon. I think that's going to end up happening. So all right, here's where it's at with him. He's guaranteed. He's going to make about 965,000 base salary. I don't know how you read some of this.
Free agent after this year. Yeah, he'll be a free agent.
He's a free agent after this year, basically. Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough.
Hey, Brandon. Hassan Reddick finally had a so-called breakout game against a very porous Washington offensive line, but I'm still not sure they're using him to the best of his ability. How do you think they should best utilize his skill set?
I mean, he better be rushing the passer. We saw, I think, if I'm remembering correctly here, like the one touchdown the Eagles gave up to the Vikings when he was in coverage, and it did not look good. So it's funny because you can look back at the numbers and like, oh, he's only dropping this amount of time. It's like, okay, but like one of those plays could be a scoring play. That's like kind of a big deal still. I get that maybe you have to do it literally more than never for different reasons in terms of trying to trick people. But I think, to me, you're overthinking it sometimes when you're trying to trick the offense as opposed to you have a really good talent. You don't need to trick him. Just let him go out and beat the opponent. Like, that's what the best players do in the NFL. It's not about subterfuge. It's just like they're way better than everyone else. And they just dominate. Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. I kept saying about some, you need to get, no, just line them up out there and say, go hunt.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? That alleviates all the trying to formulate a way to pass. If he can't pass rush, then he shouldn't be getting paid the money he's paid.
Right.
Let him go out there and rush the pass, period.
Right.
Brandon, let's talk about Nick Sirianni and where he's at now. Second year, last year was a lot of turnover, obviously, but still got the team to the playoffs. We know that he turned over the play calling duties, but there seems to be such a connection. I know today, and you heard it, he was talking about he played with the video of Tiger Woods when he was in his prime, still hungry, still trying to do his thing. He seems to have a pretty good emotional pitch and an idea how to connect with this group. Maybe it's just him as a leader. Do you get that sense that he's really almost taking it to another level? Now, I know some people want to get on him because he's wearing a Mike Quick jersey, which who cares? But anyway, his players seem to buy in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it fits him. Maybe not every coach can pull that off or be, weirder, but like he's just that's who he's been consistently. Yeah. And I think with Sirianni, my big question about him heading into this season was like, what kind of edge does he bring to the team, especially because he's not calling plays? Like what makes him special? And I think it might be like the culture aspect of everything and keeping this group of guys together and keeping them tight and forming a chemistry that it's early, but like, that was such a big factor for the 2017 Eagles and part of why they were so good. And it's easy to have that chemistry, obviously, when you're winning and you're dominant like that. But I think those, there's some things that go hand in hand there. And I think so far, so good in terms of on that front, and Sirianni creating kind of a special culture here. The players like each other, they're connecting. There's good vibes, I would say, on the whole. So I think that is something you kind of can give him credit for.
Hey, Brandon, how surprised are you that this young Jacksonville team is now becoming one of the teams talked about across the league?
Yeah, I mean, you look at different metrics. They're like second in point differential after blowing out the Chargers. They're second in Football Outsiders DVOA. I mean, like it's a legit team. So it was surprising when or at least I thought when the line for this game opened at like 7 points. I think it's
6.5. Yeah,
gone down to 6.5 now. It's a legit team. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in those last 2 games. He's looking like starting to finally show like he's making a leap. Doug Peterson, obviously we know him. He's a really good coach. They've had talent. You have Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen, the defensive player. So like there's a lot of pieces down there. It's all kind of coming together, I think. They're tired of losing. They had such a joke of a head coach last year that going to any kind of actual head coach this year is just a huge upgrade. So I buy them to some extent. Now I do think the Chargers game, they benefited from like Justin Herbert being injured, and there's no Keenan Allen or J.C. Jackson, and Joey Bosa got hurt, and Rashawn Slater was hurt, and their starting center was hurt. So like it definitely benefited in week 2 from some of those injuries there. But they're a legit team.
Brandon, looking at the division, we saw the Giants and the Cowboys go on Monday night. Giants got off to the quick start. They lose Monday. Dallas, to their credit, keeping it together without Dak Prescott and of course Washington, who we saw last week. what's your sense of the division here in terms of, is it just strictly a 2-horse race? And how good are the Cowboys? Because that pass rush looked pretty ferocious the other night.
Yeah, I mean, entering Monday Night Football, before the Cowboys played the Eagles and Cowboys, and the Eagles had, coming off a 9-sack game, were tied for the NFL lead in sacks. And that's obviously been surpassed now with the Cowboys racing out to first. And yeah, that pass rush is for real. I mean, obviously Micah Parsons is a problem. DeMarcus Lawrence has been a very good player for years. It's a problem. And I don't really, the Giants are 2-1. They might even be 3-1 because they can very well beat the Bears, who are not good. But I don't buy them at all as a good team by any means. The offensive line is clearly not up to snuff to hang with the big boys. But yeah, that Dallas defense is for real. The offense, we'll see. Dak was not looking good. I'm sure we can all remember before he got hurt. I can only imagine how an injury to his throwing hand is going to make things better. But in the meantime,
that's why I want him to play.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I don't want to see Cooper Rush. I do
But the defense is a problem.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I mean, the ability to get after quarterback, I imagine they're going to go and we're a couple weeks away from this, but they're going to take the Detroit approach. That's how they win. They do it against anybody.
Yeah,
with that pass rush, that's for sure. Lastly, on this, and I know you were down there in DC, but what kind of disaster area is Carson Wentz at this point, and how much longer does the Washington football team / Commanders stay with him if this still looks like this 3, 4, 5 weeks from now?
I just don't think there's so clearly a ceiling with Carson Wentz, right? I bring up the fumble stat all the time, but because it's extremely relevant. He's 69 fumbles in 88 games. That is not. It's never going to go away. It's never going to get fixed. So you're always going to have to be fighting this uphill battle. Where you're well, we hope the fumble doesn't come at a time where it's a really bad moment for us, or we hope it bounces the right way.
Because there's so many good times for you to fumble, right?
Yeah. Right. That's right. You're going into a game knowing he's probably going to fumble at some point. Right, can we survive the fumble? So just that alone, it's a deal breaker, and it puts a ceiling on your team. And really, to me, he should be out of the league, or at least in terms of I think what his priorities line up with, because I don't see him being happy with being a backup, and I can't see how Washington comes back with him for another season after this year and be things are going to be different. No, he is what he is, and it's a player that you can beat up on some bad teams. You can go 7-10, 8-9, around there at the best, but I just don't think that's what you really want.
And how big was the takeover there on Sunday?
Oh, I mean, you had players talking about it. Jalen Hurts, praised the Eagles fans. You saw everyone running out or in the tunnel at the end there. There's always going to be midnight green in that stadium, and I will say it's kind of impressive too from the standpoint of this isn't late in the season FedEx Field game where Washington fans are already just checked out because the team is terrible. They entered this game 1-1. They have lost to the Lions, obviously, but there's okay, maybe we can kind of be decent, and no, just automatically the wind taken out of their sails.
They don't believe, that's for sure. Last thing for me, as far as Doug goes, all cheers.
Again, they better be. There's not a single good reason to boo him at all. I think, in terms of what I think will happen, yes, I do think it'll be cheers.
All right, Brandon. Listen, man, keep up the good work. We love everything you do, all the content you put out. Manager and editor-in-chief, Bleeding Green, of course, BGN Radio as well. Brandon, we appreciate it, man. Thanks.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, you got it. That is Brandon Lee Gowton. All right, so we'll take a timeout, guys. We'll keep it rolling here. We'll get the NFL stuff. We haven't got to buy or sell, okay? We haven't got to our NFC rankings yet as well. All kinds of good stuff. Hey, little update, which I'll give you too. The the Sunday night game, I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but the Sunday night game, which we talked about a little bit earlier, all the weather issues that are taking place here, around our country, is Kansas City at Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
If it's too bad Sunday night, they may play the game in Minnesota.
I'm surprised they didn't move it to New Orleans unless New Orleans is playing at home.
Yeah.
Surprised. Played in Minnesota? You may have to.
And that's where they may play it. If, again, we don't know what it's
neutral
kind of
field.
called probably pretty soon, right? but
And
not
the
yet.
league doesn't want to go through another scenario like 2020 where they had to move all of these games around and stuff like that. They're going to get these games in regardless. And if they move it to Minnesota, will be no fans. Now, correction, you'll have football fans that will go to the game out of curiosity. It won't be a sellout, but I don't blame them. I'm surprised they will move it that far to the Midwest.
Yeah.
But I don't blame them one bit.
No, I don't either. All right, so let's get a timeout here. We'll come back. We'll continue with the NFL talk. We'll update you on a couple other little odds and ends, Phillies as well. We'll dip into a lot of different
baseball.
things.
Here we go. Yeah.
So don't go anywhere. Barrett, Derek,
Yeah.
Rob, Sports Take, Namaste on this Wednesday. All right, let's talk about Flynn Tree Services. Flynn Tree Services is an experienced, licensed, and insured Pennsylvania tree services company that will trim or remove any unwanted trees off of your property. They offer cost-effective solutions to any problem that you may face. So, you have any type of issues with your tree, in your yard, on your property? If you do, they're just a quick phone call away. They are experts at trimming all types of trees, and they serve southeastern Pennsylvania, South Jersey, and northern Delaware. Flynn Tree Services specializes in tree removal, stump grinding, and tree pruning. Now, keep in mind, as we just mentioned, we are in hurricane season, right? Which means we're going to get hit with some bad weather. Especially, it's happening down south, but it's headed this way this weekend. Now is a great time to have your trees evaluated. Make sure that if we get strong gusts of wind, heavy rains, etc., that you don't have trees come down, big branches come down. You go to their Facebook or Instagram page for more information or a sampling of their work. Give Flynn Tree Services a call, 610-850-2848, 610-850-2848, or online at flynntreeservices.com. That's flynntreeservices.com.